For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. Tracy Todd discusses her book titled Brave Lotus Flower Rides the Dragon. 20-year-old Tracy was involved in a horrific accident which left her paralyzed, ending her love for running and the teaching career she loved. The book entails how your life was changed by the horrific accident you were involved in on the 13th of April 1998. Can you tell us how the title Brave Lotus Flower Rides the Dragon came about?
Yes, my name Tracy, one of the meanings is brave, and my second name is Lian, which is of Chinese origin, which means lotus flower, and I think my journey's been very similar to that of the lotus flower, which it actually germinates in the muddy sediment of the swamp, and then it rises up through the murky water to seek the light and blossoms. And then I ride through life on this battery-powered, chin-controlled wheelchair of mine, and I think paralysis is probably the worst dragon that I've ever had to face in life. And I can't say that I managed to slay the dragon, but I have managed to make peace with it, to live alongside it. And also Dragon is a name of the specially adapted voice activated technology that I used to write the book. It's called Dragon Naturally Speaking. So that's how the title came about.
Why did you decide to share your story, and can you briefly tell us about the accident that left you paralyzed?
I think my son was 10 months old when I had my accident, and I realized then how fragile life was. So I wanted to write my story basically for my son so that he could know me and also know how much I loved him. So it started out like that, and then eventually I started getting into doing inspirational speaking, and then I found that people came to me afterwards and kept asking, don't you have a book? I felt that they wanted something tangible to take away with them after my presentation, and so that's how I actually decided, well, this is what I'm going to do. But it took me 15 years probably to write the book. Firstly, I had to learn how to use a computer. Secondly, I had to learn how to use the voice-activated technology. And I had a lot of emotional healing to do. And I also had to learn how to do the craft of writing. So I did a couple of online writing courses and just practiced my writing and learned to write. And the accident happened on the 13th of April 1998. We were returning back from a family holiday, and it was an Easter Monday, so the roads were hectically busy, and a car came to a sudden halt in front of us, and we ended up rolling our car, and I hit my head on the roof of the car and broke my neck instantly.
You must have felt at ease when you realized that your son was okay after the accident.
Yes, I knew immediately that I was paralyzed because I couldn't move. And I could hear my baby crying somewhere in the back seat of the car, but I couldn't turn my head to see where he was. But miraculously, he didn't have a scratch on him. My husband was driving at the time and had his seatbelt on, so he was fine. And we also had our little dog with us that we'd taken on holiday with us, and our dog was fine. So yes, it was a huge relief. And I think my son's presence in my life was very, very instrumental in my physical and my emotional healing.
It must have been a terrible ordeal to come to terms with how your life changed after the accident. What challenges have you dealt with since the accident, and what kept you going?
I think there are many challenges. For me, the biggest one and constant one is my complete lack of privacy and lack of independence. I rely on somebody to do absolutely everything for me 24/7, and I think that for me is quite tough. So that's an ongoing challenge. I think to get through it, I've spent hours praying to my ceiling and to God, and asking for strength to get through each day. Definitely my son, the fact that he was still a baby and needed me to continue to be his mum. He doesn't actually remember me being any different to paralyzed from the neck down, and I think in a sense that's a wonderful blessing, because to him I just had to get on with the job of being his mum. And then definitely my family, my parents, my friends, my community, they've all been very instrumental. I've had many earth angels in my life helping me with daily things. My carers. It's definitely a team effort. You know that old saying that they say it takes a village to raise a child, the African proverb? Well, definitely it takes a whole community of earth angels to enable a quadriplegic like me to live a full, meaningful life.
You had a difficult time to associate yourself with the patients who were wheelchair bound on your first visit to the occupational and physical therapy class. How long did it take to accept your limitations after the accident, and have you adapted to your condition?
I think the reason why it was so difficult initially is because I was in complete denial. I believed 100% that this was a temporary thing and that I was going to be able to walk again. And eventually when I realized, well, I wouldn't say that I accepted it, but I made peace with it so that I could actually go home, get back to my husband, get back to my child, and get back to my family. I think, yeah, that was definitely, I would say it probably took me 4 years to fully come to terms with this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life. I can't tell you that I've accepted it. I don't think it's something I'm ever going to be able to accept, because inside I still feel like that old physical Tracy. I want to run and exercise and do things. Even in my dreams I'm doing things, physically active, but I've made peace with it. You need to carry on with life and make the most of life the way it is at the moment.
Your son Chad was less than a year, and you were worried that you were not going to have the bond you longed for because of the time you spent in the hospital. How was your relationship with him when you went home?
It's amazing. You know, children have the most amazing and unique ability to adapt to change, and they are so accepting of differences. I don't know what happens to us adults as we get older, because we become judgmental. We don't accept differences as easily. We question, whereas children don't question. To him, it just was and is that I was his mum, and we learned to make contact in different ways. He used to climb up onto my lap. So when we went shopping, he never walked. He spent his life driving on my lap. You know, we'd blow a kiss to one another. He's very affectionate, so he'd put his little arms around me. He'd lie on the bed with me and snuggle into my neck and drink his bottle. He'd sit with me on my wheelchair and bring his books and turn the pages. Half the time the books were upside down, but then I just made up the story, you know. So, yeah, you learn to adapt because you have to. You don't have any other choice.
Your husband, family and friends supported you throughout the ordeal. How has that contributed to the adaptation process?
I couldn't have done it without their support, without their love. My parents, my family have taught me how to love completely, unconditionally. They've been there for me every step of the way. I think the biggest lesson I learned from this all is when a spinal cord injury, when something as dramatic as a severe spinal cord injury happens to someone, it affects the entire family. It affects the entire family unit. Boundaries can very easily become blurred. And in the beginning, I relied on my husband and my mum and my friends to help with the care. And I realized that those relationships were starting to break down. And I was just in a very fortunate position where I was able to employ caregivers that take care of my physical needs, and I very seldom allow my family and friends to get involved in my care. And I think that's definitely been a saving grace for me.
How did you feel knowing that you were never going to run and teach because of the accident?
I miss running. I probably will miss it forever. Just being able to put on your shoes and get out, and I definitely miss exercise. Teaching, that's interesting. I think I still teach. I'm teaching in a completely different way. I used to teach grade 2s in a classroom. Now I think the world is my classroom. I can teach via social media, via my blog, and via my book that I've just written. I can bring people into my world of quadriplegia, give them an intimate look into what my life's all about. I do have to say that this is my story, written from my perspective, and I don't want to take responsibility for being the voice for anybody else that's in a wheelchair, because we've each got our own story and our own unique circumstances and our own unique challenges that we have to deal with. So I'd like to encourage others that are disabled in some way to write their own stories, because I think the world needs to hear them.
How did you feel when your ex-husband told you that he wanted out?
It was devastating at the time, but you know, having thought about it, and obviously with perspective over the years, I realized that our relationship was very much based on the physical. There wasn't enough depth to carry us through something so dramatic, and we were both very young, and there's quite a lack of support. I live in a country town in Mbambela, as it's called now, Nelspruit. Yeah, there's a lack of support, a lack of knowledge. So I think it was difficult, but yeah, it was devastating at the time, because I thought at the time I couldn't live without him. But maybe in a sense he did me a favor, because you know, we just weren't meant to be, and I've gone on and met somebody else and remarried and had a full life and done things that I would never have done if I hadn't been pushed out of my comfort zone and pushed to be independent.
What are you doing now, and what lessons have you learned from your life?
I am writing, I'm speaking, I do a lot of counseling. Although I'm not a qualified counselor, I find that people are drawn to me. People come and share their stories with me. People just need somebody to listen to. So I do a lot of counseling, and I do a lot of teaching. I'm promoting my book at the moment, and sure, the lessons that I've learned are: take nothing in life for granted. This can happen to anyone at any time. It can happen suddenly. You know, there's no guarantee that when you walk out of your door in the morning that you're going to return in the same state, if at all. So I think, yeah, that's probably the biggest lesson is taking nothing for granted, and then also trying to live a life of gratitude, because I realize that I have still so much to be grateful for. I've come across many quadriplegics and other people with disabilities living in our rural townships that don't even have a wheelchair. They get pushed around in wheelbarrows, and sometimes the families don't even take them out. They get stuck at home. So I've got so much to be grateful for, and that is what I try to focus on, the positive and not the negative.
That was Tracy Todd speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about her book titled Brave Lotus Flower Rides the Dragon.